Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Vital Conversations, Dialogues on Living and Dying Well. I'm your host, Kim Adams, and this evening, we're having a bit of a challenge right now with my guest getting on. We can see her, but we can't hear her audio, so we're going to move ahead, and hopefully that will be corrected soon. So in addition to being your host for this monthly series, that I want to welcome those of you that have been on earlier months, welcome back, and those that are new tonight, welcome. And in addition, as I said, to hosting this live webinar series, I am also an end-of-life educator and coach, and I work with people in helping them to design the roadmap for the final chapter of their life, whatever that might look like. So I do one-on-one work, presentations, group work, speaking, those types of things. So if you know of anyone that could benefit, yourself or other groups, please certainly feel free to send me an email. So before we get started, let me just remind you that, again, we are live, and I'm hopeful that our guest tonight, Pashta, will be able to get the audio working, but things do happen, and we just kind of roll with that. So if something should go wonky on your end, or looks like the screen should freeze, or the audio goes out, just 9 times out of 10, if you just refresh your browser, you should be all set. I have enabled the chat function, which is on the sidebar, that you can certainly type in questions and comments. Go ahead now and say hello and let us know where you're listening in from. That would be great. That's your way to interact with us. I have enabled that chat bar, so go ahead and do that. And before we get started with Pashta tonight, today is National Healthcare Decisions Day here in the US, and it's also National Advanced Care Planning Day in Canada. And some of you may have participated in other events around these today, and so we're happy that we're going to be able to discuss some of that this evening. So a special welcome to our friends in Canada, as my guest, Pashta MaryMoon, is from Canada, so a special welcome there as well. So again, before we get started, I just want to read some statistics regarding advanced care planning types of things. So these are some statistics that I found from the Conversation Project, which is a resource that I'll mention later on, that there's a national survey that they did in 2013 said that 90% of people say that talking with a loved one about end-of-life care is important. 90% say it's important, but 27% have actually done it. So that's a huge gap. Another statistic from California Foundation, 2012, did a survey. And they found that 82% of people said that it's important to put their wishes in writing, but only 23% have actually done it. So there clearly is a gap from people wanting to plan around end-of-life care, and they say that it's important, and the gap then comes from when they actually do it. And so that's actually one of the roles that I play in terms of working directly with people to support them in looking at what is getting in the way. So those are just a couple of statistics. Actually, let me just give you a couple more here. Again, the 2012 survey from Californians by the California Healthcare Foundation found that 60% say that making sure their family is not burdened by tough decisions is extremely important to them. 60% say it's important, that they don't want to burden their family with tough decisions that the family would need to make. But only 56% of people have actually communicated to their loved ones what their end-of-life wishes are. So again, another huge gap. Here's a piece around a statistic around talking with their doctor. 80% say if they're seriously ill, they would want to talk to their doctor about end-of-life care. But only 7% report having an end-of-life conversation with a doctor. So again, clearly there's the want and the desire, but when it comes to actually doing it, there seems to be the gap, and there seems to be something that's kicking in there that's not causing that to happen. So great, I see people are starting to type in. Katina, welcome from Kamloops. And Maya, Audio temporarily buzzed. Okay, it's better now. Great. Hello from Vancouver. Thank you, Deborah, from writing in. From Mia from Vancouver as well. Great. Okay, so let me read. I think Pashta, are you here? Pashta, can you hear me? I can hear her, but she can't hear us yet. So let me read Pashta's bio.
I can hear you.
Great. Okay.
I can hear you. I just don't know if you can hear me.
I can. So stay right there. I'm going to read your bio. Okay. So
Okay.
Pashta MaryMoon is the founder of Journeying Beyond, offering full PanDeath midwifery services as well as advanced care planning. She is also one of the founders and the executive director of CINDEA, the Canadian Integrative Network for Death Education and Alternatives, which provides Canadians information about death midwifery and the legal option of a home funeral, about caring for your own at home, and offers a PanDeath link directory of organizations, both Canada-wide and by each province and territory. And I want to say that I'm honored that Pashta, in addition to Canadian resources, has US resources and others throughout the world. And these webinar series, the link to this is listed on Pashta's resource link as a resource for the United States. So I want to thank Pashta for that. Throughout most of her adult life, Pashta has found herself both returning to the issue of death in our culture and working with death journeyers and their family along the continuum. She worked for those dying with AIDS back in the 1980s and 1990s and has 30 years of planning and leading funeral and/or memorial services. She has been a birth coach for several mothers, including one where the fetus was born dead. She was one of the founders of the first bedside singing programs in a hospice unit in Canada. And more recently, she's trained with Final Passages, which is a training for home funeral guides and death midwives, and also a variety of organizations on advanced care planning. Pashta has an honors degree in world religions and a teacher certificate in Christian metaphysics. And she's been a practicing priestess for over 30 years. She's a graduate of the Justice Institute's mediation program, and she's presently the clerk of the Memorials and Pastoral Care Committees of her local Quaker meeting. Pashta has always been deeply touched by the process of death and dying and is committed to supporting death journeyers and their family through the full spectrum of the PanDeath Journey. So welcome, Pashta. Can you hear me, Pashta? Pashta, are you there? Okay, we seem to have lost Pashta. Thank you all for chatting in. I see that Diane here from Texas and Todd from Virginia, welcome. And you're just seeing a green screen. I think if people refresh their browser, maybe not. And my apologies about the screen, and I hope that you could just hear the audio okay. So again, we cannot hear Pashta. Pashta, are you there? Pashta,
Kim, I'm there, but you don't.
Okay, so welcome. Talk to us a little bit about CINDEA and your work.
I'm not sure everybody's hearing me. I hope they are. Kim, let me know if you're actually hearing me right now.
Yes.
We're having a lot of problems with getting my mic to unmute, and that's the problem that we're having.
Okay, you're good.
You're hearing me? Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I work in two Intercan, of which I'm a death midwife and a practicing death midwife. So I work directly with families where there's a death that is imminent or has happened. And I work with people around that. I work with people with dementia through music, care planning, consulting. And that's one of the things we were to talk about today, because it is National Advanced Care Planning Day, and I think Health Care Planning Day in the U.S. I think it's the same day.
Yes.
For me, it's about the whole spectrum of planning for one's end of life and for survivors after that. And the other is working on CINDEA. I'm the executive director of CINDEA, which is an organization, a nonprofit, and a website that provides information about options that people have, particularly around caring for their own dead at home. And in essence, but as well as that, providing information and links to information throughout the whole spectrum of death. So right from the beginning of advanced care planning through all the information that you need to do a death at home and do a home health, through to the grieving stage afterwards.
Great. Beautiful. Pashta, you used the word PanDeath Journey. Tell us what that is. Pashta?
Kim, once again, you're really breaking up. Yes.
You used the word PanDeath Journey. What do you mean?
What do I mean by the pan?
Yes.
My apologies to everybody. There's a lot of static coming through, and so it's hard for me to hear Kim. But okay, yes, PanDeath Journey. Part of it is just simply that there is a process, a journey that happens from the moment that we start thinking about our end of life and what we would choose and not choose. End of life, our death, and then the people around us who really care about us, that whole grieving process. It is, in fact, one journey. And even the people who, are quotes, the survivors, they're taking that journey as well. And that journey carries on for them in this world after their loved one dies. And of course, there's many people who believe that the journey of the death journey carries on after the death in some other world or some form of afterlife. The real point about the continuum, though, is that there's some kind of continuum, some kind of consistency in the philosophy about how we approach our advanced care planning, how we approach what actually happens to the medical system and hospice and palliative care and all of the other resources that we might use during that period of time. And then that then carries over to the time afterward we have died. And in our culture right now, that philosophy is there. Some palliative care, if you're lucky enough. Hold on a moment, folks. I've kind of lost. Okay, I lost Kim, but now I've got. If we have a really excellent doctor and we have hospice and palliative care, there's a whole kind of philosophy that process through our end of life, centered care of really paying attention to what that person's values is, making decision values on their traditions, on their beliefs, not just on what is the default medical situation. But once we die, there's maybe the body and the in our after home, which home has a very different philosophy. You're all of a sudden you're dealing with strange you probably don't know very well. Maybe you've had an initial talk as you made arrangements before the death, but you don't know them very well, and they don't know you. They don't know what the family dynamics are, and they don't, I want to clarify here that there are some wonderful funeral directors who actually do practice person-centered care. But the more traditional or conventional funeral homes have a very different philosophy than hospice and palliative care. And so all of a sudden, in this time of grief, and there's a certain amount of trauma that happens even if you're expecting the death and it happened peacefully, there's a trauma that happens because there's that moment of that you can no longer connect to the person that was and interact with them. I mean, you can connect with the body and sense of being able to connect to the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual person isn't there to connect.
Right.
Anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Is like a huge threshold that the survivors are walking over at that moment.
Mm.
And it's very difficult in that particular situation for them to even to then go in and talk and really be able to share what's important for you and what's important.
Mm-hmm. So step one, Pashta, is the advanced care planning.
Forward
with
this journey. Loss of rest. Kim, you said something to me and was broken up.
So what you're speaking about then is really
are not working well together.
The step one, stage one, is what you're speaking of, right? The advanced care planning.
Yes. Care planning is stage one. And part of that advanced directive, which are the actual medical choices of getting a representative to make when you're able to see someone who can for you anymore, and who will advocate for your advanced directive and will make any decisions that you could not foresee, circumstances that happen that you were totally unexpected, and you haven't actually made a choice in your advanced directive, and it's the responsibility of your representative to judge the trade they made them with and make a decision for this particular circumstance that's consistent with those values and those choices. So that's part of it. But the other part of it as well is the whole process of what do you want to happen in your own dying process. And that's not the medical side of it, but the more emotional, spiritual journey side of it. What's important to you to have? Who's important to have close to you when you're in the process of dying? Do you want certain kinds of music? Do you want certain kinds of prayers? Is it important to you that your family stay with your body? There are lots and lots of traditions around the world where people believe that the family or other loved ones need to stay vigil with the period of time after the death. Is that important to the people around you? What's important to you in terms of your funeral? And I know a lot of people say that the funeral is for the living. And I guess I would question that. I think the memorial is for the living. A memorial or a celebration of life is for the living. But the actual funeral, about mourning the death and sending the deceased on their way, in whatever way we understand, they're continuing the journey. And so, for the sake of the death journeyer who is continuing the journey, they have a right to say and to plan out what's important to them in carrying that journey beyond death.
Makes perfect sense.
Too, yeah. I'd also add too that the whole issue of what happens to your remains. Are you going to have a traditional burial? You can have a green burial. Those also can be important factors in your advanced care planning. That's kind of, the sort of tail end of the process of what's important to you in terms of how you are returned to the planet. And a lot of that is based on one's ecological beliefs. Mm-hmm. So it's the advanced care planning isn't just about it actually moves all the way through to the final disposition.
Beautiful, beautiful. Because many times we just think it's a medical piece. What do I want medically through the process? But what you're speaking of is much broader.
Yes, it is much broader, Kim. In essence, it's about your value system and your beliefs, and whether you're applying that to specifically medical choices, or what you want for your personal care as you're dying, or what you want to happen after you die. It's all about your values and your beliefs.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes. And I certainly agree with what you're saying, because it's important that we look at all those, and it starts with our values and what we want. And what a beautiful gift to give our loved ones, that we have made those choices so that they don't have to guess.
I didn't quite hear the last few words, Kim. Can you repeat them?
Sure. The gift that we give our loved ones so they do not have to guess what we want.
What I'm hearing, Kim, even though it's broken up, is you're asking about the values, I think, for the survivors, the people who carry on, the gift to actually know about what your values are. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that is really important in the way that we take care of our dying and we take care of our dead. And if they can share with us what's meaningful to them in both the before and the after process and the during, that's why we call it PanDeath, because it is before, during, after death. If we can share with our loved ones what's really important as they are carrying out our wishes, they know that they're honoring us. And that's true all the way through because it's advanced care planning day. I'm going to focus a bit more on things like advanced directives, and also say that it's also a gift. An advanced directive is also a gift to your loved ones. Okay, let me backtrack here. I think most of the time, advanced directive way you can maintain your own voice, even when you can't speak for yourself. Your values honored and fulfilled. And it's very focused on you. But there half that is equally important. And that is making it really clear to your loved ones what you want. And if they're in the position, I mean, you only use an advance directive when you cannot communicate for yourself. If they're having to make decisions for you, whether it's your family or your representative, they're having to make decisions for you, they need to know they are the decisions as close as possible as you would have made. And realistically, there are people, it's not uncommon, who didn't listen to an advance directive, and they question themselves for the rest of their life on whether or not that is what you really would have wanted. And especially when we're talking about life and death decisions, when we're talking about withdrawing or withholding life support, people can carry around a huge amount of guilt or tentative guilt that they made the wrong choice. And so an advance directive is a way of taking that guilt and that wandering away from your loved ones after you die, and the decades afterwards that they're carrying around the decision that they made.
What a gift. Pashta, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great, great. And so I hear what you're saying about the gift. No guilt. What else is important with advance directives?
Again, Kim, I'm not quite hearing you clearly. I heard important, the gift, advance directive.
Is there more?
And it's a gift to yourself, but it's also equally importantly a gift to your family.
There's some resources.
To your representative.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure I have anything more to say about that. And ask me another question. I'll try and catch it.
Sure. So in terms of resources to help people, maybe not the paperwork, but in terms of beginning the conversations. Do you have resources?
Can you again? It came. Resources
to start the conversation
for advance care plan.
Yes.
A lot of resources out there, and I think pretty much, every medical family caregiving any group that has anything to do and their support, giving workshops, all of that. It's very, very available. It's hard work, though. Really doing an advanced directive, especially a comprehensive advanced directive, is incredibly hard work. You're having to make life and death decisions for yourself and really test your values. It's very easy to think that you would want to carry on with as much medical intervention as possible, because right now you feel you're well enough, and if you broke your leg, you would want help. If you were having some kind of stomach problem, it wasn't taken out. But when you start thinking about the realities of the end of life and what could be happening at that point, your decision could be extremely different. And for a lot of people, it is very different. They don't want as much intervention as is the default within the medical profession. Although it's becoming less the default now, but it still is the basic default, because doctors are still being trained that if you die, it's a failure.
Yes.
But it could be the other way around, you could also you could assume that, you just, around 80, you want to just cut out and go and suffer chronic illnesses that happen as people get older. When you actually sit down and talk about that and look at all of the options that are available and the medical intervention that's possible, you may change your mind about that drastically. So, and it's really hard work. My experience in working with people through a comprehensive advanced directive is that it takes them over a year to complete it. There's that time needed to go back and reassess your values, and to think about scenarios, medical scenarios that you had never even considered before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a one-shot conversation. Let me share some resources here for people that are on the call. Let me click back over to me, and hopefully we don't lose Pashta. The Conversation Project, conversationproject.org, is one resource online that's a conversation starter kit to begin to have these types of conversations that Pashta is referring to. And one of my goals is to pull the whole death, dying, end of life from under the table to on top of the table. Let's talk about it. And so the Conversation Project, started by Ellen Goodman, actually, let's see, it begins to talk about, it's a free service. You can kind of go on to their website and download, but it not only for having conversations with yourself, with your family, with your doctor, and also there's a piece there about having conversations with children, not necessarily, certainly for a child that has a life-limiting illness, but also just talking about death and dying with children. So it's a great resource, the conversationproject.org. Another one that I use a lot with clients as well is called the 5 Wishes. And you can find them on agingwithdignity.org. And I'll make sure to put these web addresses in the email replay. But the 5 Wishes actually talks about what Pashta is speaking about. So there's a medical component to the wishes, as well as a personal, spiritual, and emotional component. And again, these are just beginning tools to help begin the conversation. As Pashta said, it could take up to a year to really do a thorough assessment of what it is that you really need, because we're moving beyond just what we think about with healthcare proxy and living wills. from a medical standpoint. And certainly those are extremely important. You know, when you're not able to speak for yourself, having that healthcare proxy, someone that knows your wishes. So again, if they need to know your wishes, you need to have the conversation with them. And the whole medical piece, if you become incapacitated, what medical interventions do you want or do you not want? That's pretty standard. There's also these bigger issues like Pashta is mentioning, the emotional and spiritual. What are your values? What's important to you? You know, how do you want to live out your last days? And it just goes from soup to nuts. You know, what do you want after death? You know, we just think, well, we're living. What about after death? You know, is a funeral something you want, or a cremation, or a home funeral, or a green burial? There's lots of options available. Next month, we're actually going to be having Peg Lorenz, who is a home funeral guide. She's on the board of directors for the National Home Funeral Alliance. So we'll be talking all about the option of home funerals, that those are legal and we're able to do and care for our loved ones after they pass at home. We don't need to go to a conventional funeral home like we have been indoctrinated to believe. Now, that's an excellent option for some people, and for others, it is absolutely not something that they want. So we'll be talking about that next month. And the 5 wishes is valid in 42 states plus the District of Columbia here in the States. So that's definitely something that you know, we can look into. And another online resource is called My Directives, with an S, mydirectives.com. And again, that's another free resource online. 5 wishes is, there's a small fee. You can either do it online, or you can mail away, or you can send away and have them mail it to you. I think it's like $5. But it's a starting point. It's the ability to begin to have the conversation and begin to put things down in place. So I just wanted to share that that's some resources here that I found very helpful. Okay, Pashta. Are you there? Shall we move along?
There.
Excellent. Shall we move along the continuum if you have nothing more around advanced care planning? I'd love to talk about midwifery and your experience.
Kim, you're going to have to ask me again. That came through very garbled.
Sure.
Please try one more time.
Sure, no problem. Would you like to share about midwife services along the continuum?
I can hear that you're asking me something.
Midwife services?
I can hear you asking me something about the
midwife services. What is it?
Are you asking me what services I give along the continuum?
Yes, including midwifery.
Okay. I start off with advanced care planning, and I work with people over a period of, a year or longer. The advanced directive, it's much more detailed than 5 wishes or the other alternatives. It looks at a lot more variables and what could happen medically, and clarifies those and gives you a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different answers, and plus with every issue that might comes up, there's a place for you to talk about what are your values decision. And then every case is different, Kim, in terms of an actual death. Every single case is different. But the sort of classic death midwifery cases, you would get involved when the person. Terminal is actually not a word that's being used a lot anymore in the medical language because there is no such moment that you become terminal. There's so much medical intervention that, terminal is supposed to be, you've got 6 months or less to die. That just doesn't exist anymore, that kind of determination. So it's more a case of when that going to get cured, and you are not going to get considerably better, and it's not going to last very long. And you become aware of the fact that you're beginning on that path towards death. And then it might take several years to get there. And so, I would work with the death journey or in a family at that point to start talking about what do they want, have they done their advanced planning, and what do they want to happen as part of their death process, but also what do they want for their end of life. Is it important to them? For example, there's programs to do life story legacies. Is it important for them to record or videotape things that are really meaningful to them, their memories and their thoughts to leave for their children and their grandchildren? Is it important to go visit, your grandmother's grave one last time? Is it important, even though you're not mobile, to be taken out into the forest one more time? All of those things that, that it's kind of like your bucket list, right? Except that it's your bucket list knowing extremely limited now.
Yes. And from there, what happens?
And what do you ask really quality of time, and what do you want to leave for others around you, which can take a whole bunch of different forms. So beginning to plan that out and supporting with hospice and palliative care. Sometimes that means going and looking for alternative treatments, because as amazing as our medical system is, it cannot treat all pain and it can't treat all conditions, and in allopathic medicine. So sometimes alternative things work a lot better. And so going to look for those kinds of things that would help you be more pain-free, to be more functional in the time that you have. Beginning to work with the family, and actually I start looking, if at all possible, I start looking at the funeral and the memorial service very, very early on, because that's something that people are used to doing. It's conventional. They know they got to talk about that at some point. And it's not unusual to talk about it before death. Mom, what do you want in your funeral? You want roses or lilies? Do you want a clergy person there? Do you want this prayer read? Do you want that song sung? That's pretty traditional for us to talk about it. So we're okay about talking. In the process of doing that, the values and the concerns of the death journey and the family start to come out. And you start building upon that. Maybe there are things death journey or forth that they would have thought would happen after the death. For example, that a celebration of life has to happen after death. Why can't we have them before death while the death journeyer is there to be able to hear and absorb all of the memories and the special meaning that they had for all the people who happen to be in that room, have come together for that rite. So that might be something that we pull out of the funeral and the memorial conversation and make it part of the end of life in the after. So there's a lot of things like that that we would be talking about.
That's great. That's great. So really a broad brush Yes. You're doing a broad brush. Can you hear me, Pashta?
Again, Kim, I actually I'm not hearing anything.
Okay. How about active dying?
I heard how did, that's all.
How about active dying? Active dying?
Kim, I have a feeling that you're going to have to try and talk to me in single words because unfortunately, and I'm sorry, everybody listening, this is unfortunately what I'm hearing is so garbled that it's very hard for me to hear what Kim is asking me.
Active dying.
Okay, I heard dying.
Active dying. Midwife?
Do you want me to talk about the actual dying process?
Midwife.
Midwife.
Yes.
Are you wanting me to parallel, or why we use the word midwife for death, how it parallels to a birth midwife?
Yes. Yes.
Kim?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
Pashta.
I don't think I could go through it all, right off the top of my head. But for one thing, the most important part of this is that there's a real similarity in the philosophy. I mean, first of all, there's a focus on trying to keep things at home as much as possible. And even with a birth midwife, you can plan a whole home birth and baby or mom's body decides otherwise and you end up in the hospital, right? It's, you have to move actually happening, but the whole concept is to try and keep it at home and on the family's turf in their space, according to their values, and as much as possible in their time frame. I mean, one of the things I often mention is that if there's a home funeral, people have a choice to have people come and say their goodbyes to the person who's died from 8 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock in the morning. That's not something you can do in a funeral home. So it's very much about choosing what works for that family and what works for the home environment, what works for the people who are around it. It's not based on, the kind of 9 to 5 situation. And so a lot of it has to do with, as well, pulling out what's really valuable, both in a birth and a death, helping the family to figure out what's really valuable to them, and being, I guess for me, one of the most important parts of that is that as you're going, I mean, birth and death are message. I mean, they're the biggies in life, right? Getting born and dying. And they're highly significant, they're highly potent and powerful experiences, both for the person going through it, the child or the person who's dying, but all the people around the being born.
Yes.
In that situation, you want to be with somebody that you know, somebody that you trust, somebody that has some what your mission is, what your wishes are, what things are really, as will change, it will not be what you expect it to be, no matter how well you plan. There's always going to be something that's different. If someone who's walking with you all the way through and wishes a lot easier for them to help you make it across the flow of what happens, instead of a detour into a place where you no longer are able to maintain your values. And the same is true afterwards, after the death, because the family themselves have been involved in the whole process. Then it's easier if you have this person who can carry on working with the family as they start to go through their own grieving process, and as well as that, begin to the decisions that won't be made in cases won't be made immediately. How are we going to get together and spread these ashes and you do around that? And the containers being a song.
Pashta, you're fading. So I think what she was saying is, oh, go ahead, is the continuum, to have someone present with the person that is dying. There's some continuity there, and there's some comfort, and it's not a stranger with the family, but it's someone that kind of accompanies, and the analogy of a birth midwife helping someone come into this world, and then a death midwife helping someone to transition from this world. So thank you for that, Pashta. As we're coming up to the top of the hour, I'm just curious if anyone has any questions, comments. I so appreciate you guys hanging in there with us with the technical difficulties with the audio being a little wonky and the video, but certainly type in anything into the chat. And I promise that we will do this topic again when we have a lot clearer line and video. And so again, I just really appreciate that. So if there's any comments, questions, feel free to type them into the chat. That would be great. And there's a little bit of a delay, so I'm not seeing anything yet. And if there's not, again, I just, Pashta, any final words?
Yes.
final words?
Do I had
Deborah, thank you. Yes, Pashta is awesome. She wrote a note here saying that Pashta, that Deborah took your workshop last year on home funerals and you helped her family so much to make her mother's home funeral wonderful, divine, euphoric journey. It's been 3 weeks already and we are still in awe that we did it. So blessed. Thank you, Pashta. So Deborah, I'd love for you to also join us next month when we have Peg Lorenz on the board for the National Home Funeral Alliance to be able to share your story a little bit more and to encourage others with your experience that you had with Pashta around home funerals. Would love for you to join the webinar next month. You'll certainly be getting an email with the link, so definitely feel free to join us. Okay, Jacqueline, yes, Pashta. Do you think persons over the age of 80 may be bullied into changing? Okay, advanced care directives. Pashta, a question. Jacqueline, I'm wondering if maybe I'm going to have to email it to her and she can get back in touch with us. Pashta, can you hear me?
Kim, are you asking if I can hear you?
Yes.
And I can. I can't hear what you're saying. So my suggestion, since this is only a lift, is that, you know, you share what you know, had come up in the chat room from the participants. I trust you to.
Great. Yeah. So what Pashta's saying is that
I can relay them.
I'll relay the questions. Yes. Yes, Pashta. Yes. Thank you, Katina. Very valuable. So happy that you're here. Thank you. Yeah, Jacqueline, we'll get your question answered. Thank you all so much. I want to be mindful of the time as we come to the top of the hour. And again, you'll get the link. I by no means assume that people are interested in every webinar, so I'll send the webinar link. And if you're interested, again, it'll be on home funerals next month and about care, a tradition, an old tradition that we used to do quite a lot about caring for our loved ones at home. So if that is of interest to you, Peg Lorenz, who's here in Massachusetts with me, we'll be doing that together on May the 12th. And so you'll get a link for that. And let me just see if there's anything else. Again, I just want to really say thank you for sticking with us here. And I'll see how the replay comes out. Sometimes live, it's a little wonky, but the replay is just clear and important, or excuse me, clear and, you know, will be valuable. So Colleen, thank you. Such an important topic. You're very welcome. Would it be possible to interview Pashta again, record it, and then send to it? You know, actually, that's a great idea. We can, you know, do it offline and then be able to send it so that maybe it'll be clear. But absolutely, Pashta's a great woman who, you know, I've gotten to know, and so I was just thrilled to be able to share her with you tonight, and I so appreciate all that have been here. Let me see if we can get any final words from Pashta before, and if not, then I'll definitely relay the questions as well as the comments, and we'll go from there. So let's just see if she can hear me. Pashta? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Again, I'm only picking up a small bit of what you're saying, though, Kim.
Okay. Final words?
Perhaps I could just take a moment here then to thank everybody for coming today and listening and struggling with us through these technical problems. And I wish you all blessings.
Great. Thank you, Pashta. Thank you, Pashta. Great. Well, again, just thank you, everyone. Again, you'll be getting a link to the replay. I'll take a look at that and see how it comes out. But I think that was a great suggestion in terms of being able to maybe record it and then send it out, or definitely try again with Pashta, because this is a very important topic, not only on National Advanced Care Planning Day and National Healthcare Decisions Day, but every day. So again, I hope this inspired you to begin the conversations. Again, I'll have those resources and those links. If I can support you in any way, again, feel free to reach out. My services include helping people to write this, design the roadmap for their final chapter, and that does absolutely include this advanced care planning as the starting point. So thank you again, everyone. Appreciate you being here and look forward to you joining us next month on May the 12th. I think it's the 12th, for home funerals. All right, good night, everyone. Take care.